No? What are you making with it? What about a salad? Yeah, I would like that. Some tomatoes, salad. That'd be good. After I get done with the show. Yeah. Thank you. I love you too. Okay. Don't forget to get Gino here on time at the end. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Vintage Motocross Q&A. I am your host, Joe Abadi. I want to thank you all for being here tonight, and of course, Jordan for helping out, making the show as great as it is every week. I hope everyone's here. I don't know. A lot of people seem to be distracted by what is on television these days and learning how to count to 270. Right now, let's get down to the starting line, which is, of course, brought to you by Motion Pro, and I'll tell you more about what you're going to see on the show tonight. In the next time, try this segment, I'm going to show you how to remove a blind bearing and the tool we used to do it with. In the Moto Showcase, a 1969 Kawasaki 238 Green Streak barn find. Where do you see this bike? And here's the problem segment. We've got a couple of different questions. We're going to revisit something else we talked about a few weeks ago. And I'm going to tell you a lot more about what's going on there when that segment comes up. What's it worth? A 1980 Husqvarna CR125. We've got some interesting video on this as well as the price. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Race day, we've got a lot of great footage from last week's race in Maryland. We've got interviews. We've got race action. It's coming up. Trivia contest returns. That's right. It's the first Wednesday of the month where we give away a copy of Keith Geisner's book, which, by the way, was a finalist in the Indy Excellence Award. Keith Geisner book, Finding Number 49, all about the Harley race team. We're going to be giving that away. Stick around. We're going to give the question. You're going to call in with the answer live. You'll be here on the air giving it to me. Somebody's going to win a book tonight. Compliments of Keith Geisner. Don't forget to share the show. If you're on Facebook, share it with your friends. Tell them to come down, listen to Vintage Motocross Q&A, watch all the great things that we're going to have on the screen here tonight. And also, if you're on YouTube, share it there as well. Don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll be able to watch all of the episodes of Vintage Motocross Q&A and hear our interviews from Sunday's show, Vintage Motocross Radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's fun, it's free, it's fast, and you get to watch all the action on your big screen TV. Who doesn't like that? Plus, when you subscribe, you get a little bell like that. Ding dong, comes on, tells you when we're on live. You jump right on the couch and you're ready for action. As always, I want to thank our sponsors, AMSOIL, the first synthetic oil since 1973. Motion Pro, Full Circle Racing. We've got a special from Full Circle coming up a little bit later on in the show. Vinco, Preston Petty Products, and Nightmare Racing. On this week's Next Time Try This segment, I want to talk to you a little bit about how to remove a blind bearing. Where do you find blind bearings? Usually inside of an engine case like this. This one right here, which goes to this counter shaft, is easy to get to from both sides, and you'll be able to remove it. Just next to it is a little lace shaft bearing. You're not going to be able to get to that, but I'm going to show you how, with a special tool, you'll be able to get out stuff like that. Inside the case, you could see the blind bearing I was talking to you about just a moment ago. It's in there, and there's only one way to get it out. Now, this kit happens to come with several different cullets like this. And how a blind bearing tool works is it's threaded, and on this end, when you tighten it up, you could see that the ends open up right here. That's going to spread out. That's going to grab your bearing. That's how you're going to be able to get it out. So I'm going to take my cullet here and put it down inside, and I'm going to tighten it up. You might and probably should tighten these up with a wrench, but I think I've got this one here pretty tight, and it looks like that. So you can still see the bearing is still able to spin around in there, but those little fingers at the bottom have grabbed that bearing. Now, I only put that thing in there hand tight just a moment ago, but you really do want to make it as tight as possible. So you get a couple of wrenches on there and tighten it up. Make sure it's good and tight in there, and it's really grabbing the bearing firmly. Now, you're going to take that slap hammer type thing I showed you a moment ago. You're going to screw it into the cullet. That's how you do it. You got a tool like this, it's going to help you take out a blind bearing. There really is no other way to do it. So remember, the right tool for the right job. Thanks, Vidco. The tools that we used in the Next Time Try This segment were compliments of Motion Pro. Be sure to visit them online at motionpro.com. In the Moto Showcase tonight, we have a 1969 Kawasaki 238 Green Streak that was sent to us by David Anton. I'm going to read a little bit about it. Jordan's going to go through the slides, and you'll see a little bit more about what we're talking about. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about it as I get through with what David sent to me. Dave says two guys just walked into his garage who knew that he bought old motorcycles, and they told him about this bike. It was original, just the way you found it, and what you see here in the picture are the results after I washed it. I did find 2 heat shields, and I painted the pipe. I also got the side number plate and installed them. The bike is original and unrestored. I also got, with the bike, or they're on the bike rather, the original Japanese Dunlop tires and the seat cover. This is the way it was put away in a barn. This is the way I found it. I'm attaching a few pictures for you to see it, and you can display it on your shelf. You know, David, this is a great bike and it's a great find. Every year at the Mecum auction, one of these sells for around $8,000 to $10,000, usually in restored condition. Parts can be very, very difficult to find, especially the front and number plate assembly and the levers and perches. Very, very rare items. In fact, I know of someone who bought an NOS set of levers and perches, cost them $500. I kid you not. As far as the value of this bike goes, and I do want to talk about that for a minute, I think what you have there, anything, if you paid $3,000 or under for this bike, I think you absolutely stole it. I think it needs a little more detailing, but it is original. Looks amazing. I think with a real good detailing, it's probably, I want to say it's probably an $8,000 bike because it's original. Originality is really where the money comes in, especially on bikes like this. If it was restored, you know, it depends on the market. At Mecum, you see bikes that are really, of course, beautifully restored, very, very shiny, a lot of detail to them. Sometimes under those lights and guys under the ether, things can get a little bit out of hand. But I would value this bike at somewhere around $7,000 at least. The only thing that detracted from it in the pictures was the rusty chain. If you wanted to just take that off and either replace it, or you might want to spend some time getting that thing nice and clean again, you'd have a beautiful bike on your hands. In fact, you have a beautiful bike on your hands, David. I want to thank you for sending it into us. And for doing so, we're going to be sending you some stickers, compliments of fastguystuff.com. And if anybody else out there who is watching would like to have their bike featured here on the show in the Moto Showcase, please inbox me with some details about the bike. We'll figure out a way how you can email me some pictures, and we'll have it on the show here. You'll get yourself some stickers, compliments of fastguystuff.com. And here's the problem segment tonight, sponsored by Motion Pro. Jordan, what do we have up first? Robert DeSimone, I have difficulty tracking my time on restorations. How do you keep track of time spent? Or is it better to estimate the time for the total job? Robert, it sounds like you are maybe in the restoration business, and I can understand how it can be difficult for you to do that. Because we all get, well, we get carried away in certain little sub-assemblies sometimes, or we have difficulty when we take things apart. The best thing to do, the simplest thing to do, is have a clock in your shop and have a pad and paper alongside you at all times. Now, you may be doing something that takes 3 or 4 hours and you're expecting that, but as you're working on it, you get interrupted. If you worked on it for 30 minutes or 42 minutes, whatever it is, write it down. 42 minutes on whatever, the forks, the shocks, whatever it is. You go out and do whatever it is you're doing, you come back, you work on it again, write it down again. That's really the only way to keep track of your time on these things. And as far as maybe giving somebody a price up front to restore a complete bike, it sounds like a good idea. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, and I'll tell you why. You could have something like a frozen swing arm pivot, where you may think it's going to take you merely minutes to get out, and it turns into a 3.5 hour, 5.5 hour job. Who knows how long it might take you? You might have to get in there with heat, with some kind of puller. I've had instances where I've had to put it in a press to get them out. All sorts of little gremlins can arise when you bid on a job at a flat rate like that. So you got to be careful. Some days you eat the bear, some days the bear eats you. So given a price up front, it can work. But the other thing you have to keep in mind is there's a special relationship between you and the person you're restoring the bike for. There's a big trust game involved. So write down everything, follow up with pictures, and write down your time, because you'll even learn that at the end of a restoration, when you think it's all done and you're going over the bike and you're detailing it, maybe the cable isn't routed just quite the way you wanted it. Maybe you look at something and it isn't quite the way you had hoped it turned out. There'll be 10 things that take you 2 or 3 minutes a piece when the job is over that you're going to wind up doing. And next thing you know, you're going to have an extra half hour to 1 hour in the job more than you anticipated. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to necessarily have to charge the customer that half hour or hour because it's kind of maybe your oversight or just something that you didn't like the way it turned out. But you need to keep track of your time, and the best way to do that is to write things down, no matter how short a period of time it takes or how long. That's my advice on that, Robert. Thanks for the question. Jeff Christopher, after a fresh set of plates, the new cable and springs, etc., I can't get the clutch of my TM250 to either engage or disengage fully. It either slips or it drags. Well, Jeff, I'm going to say this. Providing that you have the right cable, the clutch plates in the correct way, the springs were good, you've got the correct oil and the correct amount in there, you got to go back to step one sometimes. And believe me, this is something a lot of guys overlook. All perches and levers are not created equal. Many times people will go out and buy aftermarket levers like this, and they don't get the full swing out of the lever. It either hits the bar, well, most of the time it will hit the bar, or the angle could be wrong and there just isn't enough swing out of that lever. So you wind up using the adjuster and you're sitting on the line and everything's hunky-dory, your clutch isn't getting hot and it's not starting to grab, but then you get off the gate and next thing you know, it's starting to slip by the time you get through a couple of turns. Take a look at your lever, take a look at your perch, see what's going on there. This one happens to be a Magura, and I want to point out 2 things. In a Magura lever, or a Magura perch, there's actually 2 holes. There's 2 holes because you can get different leverage depending on where you put the lever in that perch. Now, as a rule, you should be pulling about 10 to 12 millimeters of cable from out of your harness when you're moving your lever to shift or disengage the clutch of your bike. Anything less than that, well, is just not enough. So see to it that you're getting about 10 to 12 millimeters of cable that's being pulled out of the perch by the lever. Take a look at the lever too. Make sure that the bend of it, is it hitting the end of the handlebar, maybe down by the ball. Magura makes a great lever. When you squeeze a Magura lever, it generally goes right across the grip. You get the most out of it. But some of these copies or these aftermarket things that people are selling, you don't get the same pull, you don't get the same result. So providing everything is correct across the board, cables, lubricant, fiber plates, steel plates, and springs, just take a look at that lever. Take a look at that perch, see what's going on there. Jeff, thanks for the question. I've got a follow-up here that I'm so happy to bring you. Last week on the show, Oscar Gayton sent in a question about a bent cylinder fin just like this. In fact, this is the exact picture. On the show last week on the show at this same time, I gave him my advice. I told him that he should shore up between those fins with some metal or whatever he can get in there and use a torch, move it quickly along that fin on the bottom, and with a steel wedge, get down in between that bent fin and the straight one. The support for all the other fins will prevent those from bending. Of course, I recommended that he have it solid in a vise too. Oscar followed my advice, and you'll see in the next picture what he did. Now, while it may look a little archaic, it worked absolutely perfectly. He took some 10mm bolts and he shored up those fins and got them nice and firm to where he was able to take his torch, heat up that bottom fin, keeping that torch moving. Then he got a wedge in there, just like you see all the way to the right. He got that wedge in there and gently tap down. It went back. He let everything cool off, just as I suggested. And next thing you know, Oscar had himself a beautiful straight fin just like that. What I love about this is that on Wednesday night, I gave this advice last week. Thursday morning by 11 o'clock, my time here in California, Oscar had sent me a picture just like that, saying that here it is. Your idea worked flawlessly. I'm so excited about it. Now, I want to thank Oscar for sending that back in, letting us know that the results that he got and that my advice worked. I've done this a few times. I've done it on Hondas. But, you know, everybody may have different results. So anyway, what I told Oscar to try, he did, and he got back to me right away with the results. Oscar, thank you so much. And for anyone that's listening, proof is in the pudding. Works for Oscar, who worked for you. We're going to take a commercial break. Please don't forget to share the show, whether you're on Facebook or you are on YouTube. And when we get back from this commercial, you're going to see part of a new segment we put together called Race Day. Looking forward to bringing that to you. We'll be right back.
Hi guys, Brandon here with Motion Pro, bringing to you the world's first non-leaking cable luber. You heard me right. Non-leaking cable luber. Motion Pro has designed a very ingenious tool. It's very simple to use. There's two halves and a rubber grommet that seals the canister around the cable. By connecting the two halves together, you create a compression fit. Now once that's tight, you insert the straw for your cable lube. Of course, I'm going to recommend Motion Pro's very best cable lube. You insert the straw in the end of the cable luber. You fill the fluid into the canister, and there's nowhere else for the fluid to go but into the cable. It's quick, it's clean, it's affordable at $19.99, available from your retailers nationwide. Motion Pro Cable Luber V3, get it today, keep your cables fresh.
We're at MMX in Marysville, California. I'm here with Jared Fisher, a guy that has been keeping vintage motocross going here in Northern California for a few years now. Jared, what's it like here this weekend? What's the event? What can we expect to see?
We got the ARMA Northwest Regional this weekend here. Got a hell of a vintage track out here today I put together for the boys, and I hope everybody has a wonderful time.
Here just a few weeks ago at the Dave Coupe Classic. You were here for that also. How many events do you run a year?
For 21, I'm going to have roughly about 15 to 17 events, 3 of those being vintage, post-vintage events. We'll have the CZ World Championship. Maybe we'll be hosting the ARMA again, and then the Coupe Classic.
Now, how long has MMX been going on here?
This is my 11th year of business, and where we sit here, there wasn't a tree on this property. nothing was here.
So you really upgraded the property a lot. You've planted trees, you've put gravel down. It's a great facility, and it looks like you keep the track real nice as well.
Yeah, we work real hard. I got an excellent crew, and everybody chips away at it, and that's what we continue to do. So got a bright future here, really working on some major improvements still to come. So,
Jared, thanks for hosting the race. Jared Fisher, everyone, if you get up to Northern California, MMX is where it's happening.
right on, thanks.
If you were following motocross in the 1970s, the man I'm speaking to in just a moment, you're going to recognize his name. He was a factory Yamaha guy, raced at the same time as Bob Hanna and so many others. It's Danny Turner. Dan, thanks for talking to me today. Tell me about the vintage bikes and what's going to be happening out here tomorrow.
Oh, we're going to have a whole bunch of fun out here tomorrow, wrestling these bikes around. My bike is a 380 CZ and a 125 Rickman's Undap. And I'm looking forward to have some fun. This is basically my first ride back after my injury, you know.
Well, tell us about the injury. What happened?
A little incident, and I did a collarbone, got a plate, and 7 ribs in one shot.
Now, Dan, I mentioned a minute ago that you were on the factory Yamaha team back in the 70s, but you also rode for a couple of other different brands. Tell us about those and the results you had back then. What do you remember about those days?
Oh, great days. I rode a lot of Bultaco, and then I progressed up into, I did ride Team Monarch with Marty and a bunch of other guys, and we did that big race at a Royal Cycle Park one year. I rode for Penton West, early 73, and then I went to Husqvarna and rode to Port Husqvarna in 74, 125 and 250. And I rode a Hercules, a little bit of Hercules.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
I was trying to think about, I remember the Bultacos and the Huskies and the Yamaha years, but I'm trying to think right now, and you know, I get a little dusty too. I'm saying he rode something that was a little bit unusual. So you were on a Hercules for a while. How'd that ride come about?
Through Mike McGowan. I did a little bit of the 6-day qualifier rides on a Hercules, and that was an experience. It's not my style.
Mm-hmm.
Let me plug on this T&M Honda though.
Sure,
that was 75. I don't know if you remember, and I won the first moto at Hangtown, 1975. And so as that year went going, I hooked on with a guy that was part of D&G at one time, but he was working with Tim McCool for T&M.
Mm-hmm.
And so he put me on the nationals. That was the world's fastest privateer 125. And it was a rocket, and that's when I got the third in the 125 standings. And then the following year is when Yamaha signed me.
Danny Turner, he was there live back in the day that we all talk about. Dan, thanks for speaking to me.
There's only 4 different ones.
Are those all flyers?
Yes.
Ah!
Oh, I don't think I have that one. I don't think I
Do you
have
have
that
pesties?
one. I have pesties too.
Yeah!
I have that one.
Well,
I don't.
I ran into a friend of mine in the pits, Marty Lukachevsky, and I want to tell him that it's so good to see him. I only get to see him, it seems like at races. We just don't cross paths that much anymore.
Yeah, it's really great to see you too, Joe. And, you know, when we met, I think it was 11 or 12 years ago when we both were living in Walnut Creek, and you moved out of a rental and I moved into it because we had a friend in common.
Yeah.
Anyway, I started racing a lot of vintage motocross after that. On and off through the years, I've gone through, you know, spurts of a little of this and a little of that, but this is the kind of racing I prefer for a gentleman, and it's really great. I mean, everybody that participates in these type of events, really, I mean, it's more camaraderie than it is competition, and that's what I like about it.
So tell me a little bit more about the bike you're going to be racing tomorrow. It's standing here behind me. It is a Mako 250?
No, it's a 440.
Okay.
And I've only had it a couple of years because I lost my last Mako in the Paradise Fire.
Oh.
So after that, I bought this one actually in the Russian River Valley area, and it was pretty much ready to race. I had to do a few little things to ergonomically, you know, ergonomics for me is probably the most important thing. So having the correct controls and your brake and your shifting all set to where you're comfortable with the bike. But when I bought it, you know, all I really had to do was put new tires on it. It had this kind of an amazing, very unusual chrome. I think it's maybe a Bassani pipe made in Italy back in 30 years ago, but it seems to work well. Works performance shocks, new Dunlop tires, and of course the classic Mako look with the aluminum tank and a taller seat. That's pretty much all I had to do to this bike, and it's a proven race bike, so it runs well.
What class will you be racing tomorrow?
I'm racing in the 60-year-old expert class, and it's a stacked class. You can trust me on that. Danny Turner, Pat Brown, those names come to mind. J.P. Morgan.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be on the starting line with those guys. It's a real privilege.
It was so good to see you, and let's get together a little more often. Marty Lukachevsky.
Thank you. You think that's a Bassani pipe?
No. If it is, he made his pipes in America. He was Italian.
Oh,
I don't know.
makes a good story.
We'll never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
Oh, flaming. Throttle shot. Oh, thank God for that. That could have got over you right there.
We're at the MMX race facility in Marysville, California, and I'm here with one of the original members of the original standard motocross group. Daryl, how often do you meet here, and tell us what happens?
We meet here once a month on the third Sunday of the month, usually. And we try to do it every month, weather permitting, of course.
Now, is that just for vintage bikes?
Absolutely not. Although there are a lot of vintage guys in our club and post-vintage riders as well, we're a club that encompasses everyone, kids, modern bikes, everything.
Daryl Johnson telling us how it goes down here at Marysville. Thanks for talking to me, Daryl. My day wouldn't be complete if I didn't stop by and talk to my friend Siege. This guy has done it all from making T-shirts. His artwork is phenomenal. Plus, he put on the Hammer and Tong series for many, many years up in the great Northwest. Tell me more about the Hammer and Tong series. What were you doing up there, and how long did you do it for?
To squash a 75-hour story into 30 seconds. In 2000, Arma introduced bikes for after 75, but the West Coast guys didn't want to run them, and I understand why. And we wanted to run them, so we had an arm wrestling contest, and they said, start your own series. And we went, okay, watch this. And so we did.
Tell us about some of the shirts you made here for this event today.
When I do a T-shirt for a race, I try to always use a local person who is a deserving person. If it's someone that helped a lot or someone who is always there. It doesn't matter if they're fast or slow. It's not about stardom. So I try to get everyone on there.
I really admire that you've spread the goodness around as much as you can now. Probably, well, I don't want to say it is the most impressive, but yeah, it kind of is, because T-shirts are T-shirts, but your artwork that you have here today, original artwork that you've created. Tell me about the inspiration for the Indian picture.
Well, I got invited down to be the featured artist at the Hand-Built show in Austin, Texas. And so I had done a lot of industrial work early on. And by work, I mean imagery, spark plugs and carburetors and things. And I was looking for a bike that wasn't your standard Harley or something, obvious. And I knew a guy who had a beautiful old restored Indian board racer. And so after I popped by to see him one time, I said, I should paint that bike.
Siege, thanks for taking the time to speak to me. I know you're a long way from home, but it was great seeing you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Siege.
Jordan and I had a great time up there in Marysville this past weekend, talking with guys like Siege, Daryl Johnson, and so many more. Now, once things loosen up, we're going to want to make it out to a lot more events. So please, if you have a race coming up, vintage motocross, maybe some kind of event that pertains to anything that has to do with vintage motorcycles, why don't you get in touch with me, and Jordan and I will try and make arrangements to get to your event, depending on where it is. So, I was just looking at this. This was the first time I saw the race day clip. So looking at that and thinking about the other segments we do here on the show, from Here's the Problem to What's It Worth to the Moto Showcase, to us being out in the field, getting interviews like this with guys like Danny Turner and following race coverage. If this doesn't look like a TV show, I don't know what does. And I am really counting on you, and I tell you 2 times throughout the show, to share the show, share the show, share the show. We need to get more involved as a group, guys, if you want to see this show get better and grow. If you want to see bigger sponsors, a bigger set, more hands-on jobs with restorations, and more trips out in the field to cover races like this, you got to get out there and you got to share it. If you know some administrators to other pages, they should all be getting on board with this, guys. all of us. I'm going to be talking more about this a little next week on the show in the Just How I See It segment. But it's kind of hot right now and it's fresh on my mind, so I wanted to bring that up. Jordan, great job covering the event and doing the editing. And thanks to everybody else up there at Marysville, Daryl Johnson, CJ, and so many others who put on such a great event. In the What's It Worth segment, which is sponsored by Preston Petty, which I'll be telling you more about some of the great Preston Petty specials you'll be able to get here on the show tonight. We're taking a look at a 1980 Husqvarna CR125. It sold for $2,500 here in Northern California. I'm going to give you a little background on it. It was sitting in a garage since 1982 when it was last ridden. After a tank flush, the carb was cleaned, new hoses and air filter, some fresh gas. It fired right up in just a couple of kicks, and it runs great, shifts through all the gears. Yes, it needs some TLC, but overall, it was a good, strong bike. It also comes with a 38 millimeter 250 front end. The stock 35s were a little spindly, and it has a slightly pitted and spare rear wheel. Oh, the 35 millimeter forks were slightly pitted. It has a spare rear wheel and a spare seat and spare fender. I thought this bike was in incredibly nice shape for $2,500. It's a runner. It's hard to find anything that runs these days for less than $2,000, and it's really solid. Let's take a look at this video here that Gary had put on for us. There you go, Gary Cloutier at home, showing us how that Husky does run real sweet. I think we're going to be seeing this a lot more in the future, where guys sell bikes and they start putting more videos in their advertising, and a lot of people are going to start asking, does it run? And when you say yes, they're going to ask you, well, start it up and make a video, because we're at that point in technology where everybody's got a phone, everybody's got a camera. They're going to be asking about that. But Gary Cloutier, I'm really happy you got $2,500 for that bike. And I think Jordan's got a little bit of something more going on here.
I don't have any 20s. All I have is hundreds.
All I have is 40.
I got this is for that Husky I sold.
Okay.
And I sold that Husky for all the money. You know, where people are telling me the little 125 that I asked you.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, everyone's like, oh, 18, whatever.
Where did you get the information? Vintage Motocross
That's
Buyers
vintage,
and Sellers Price Guide on Facebook.
Thank you, Joe.
And that is true. Gary did get that information from my Facebook page, Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guides. Coming up on 6 years that page has been, since it's been created, over 15,000 members, and all they do there is talk about the price of bikes. No selling, no buying. People post bikes. We talk about the value of it, or if they're going to buy a bike and they want to post it on there with the asking price from the seller, we all get involved respectfully and we talk about the value of that bike. And when Gary came in and posted that bike there, we got to talking. We told him $2,500. He thought that was a good price. And when people came along, he was able to deal from strength, got his full $2,500 out of that, thanks to all the members at the Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page. Preston Petty was, of course, the sponsor of the What's It Worth segment, and there's 10% across the board on all Preston Petty products. That goes for front fenders, rear fenders, grips, hats, whatever he sells there, it's 10% off across the board, and Paul is going to throw in a free t-shirt with every order. What you need to do is inbox me. I will give you a code. Upon checkout, you'll get a full 10% off all the products you buy at Preston Petty Products, and Paul's going to throw in a t-shirt as well. Paul Stannard, thank you and Preston Petty for all you do for us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. Pulling my ear like Carol Burnett. The show's not over. The 522 project is, of course, sponsored by Full Circle Racing. I'm going to be telling you about a special from Full Circle Racing in just a moment. The update on the 522 project is that this week we've done something, but I haven't completed it. And I didn't want to show you like half a job. So the update is that there's no real update this week, but next week I'll have something on for the 522 segment that's going to blow your hair back. I think you're really, really going to like it. So for this week, not much of an update, but next week we're going to be coming on real strong with a real great update for you on that project. And as I mentioned, Full Circle Racing has a special going on for this month in November. And here it is right here. It's free shipping on rims and spokes. Tom McAllister, he's got a lot of stuff for a lot of popular bikes, okay? Whether it's Hondas, Yamaha, Suzuki's, Kawasaki, and CZs, or Husqvarna's and Makos, Tom McAllister is one of the greatest guys in the business. And while Full Circle Racing Limited may not be the biggest, they're a nice mom and pop store where you get personalized service. So be sure to visit my friend Tom McAllister at Full Circle Racing. Tell him that you saw the special running here at Vintage Motocross Q&A, and you're going to get free shipping on rims and spokes. Thanks, Tom McAllister, for all you do. Trivia. This is the point of the show where we give you a question, and you're going to get an opportunity to win this great book by Keith Geisner. And the first one to comment with the correct answer, you're going to call in, wins this bike. Jordan, change that. If they don't win the bike, they're going to be winning another bike in the future. In the near future, they're going to be winning a Honda, but they're not winning a Harley. They're winning a book tonight, okay? So I'm going to give you the question. You're going to call in. Susie will come out in a little while, and somebody is going to be a winner tonight, which is not something we're seeing a whole lot of these days, of getting results and seeing winners all in the same night, but I digress. Come up with the question here, Jordan. Let's see what we got. At Southwick MX 338, which is a real famous track in Massachusetts, there is a turn named after a photographer. What is this photographer's name? What is the name of the photographer that has his own corner at MX 338, the Southwick track up in Massachusetts? Call in now if you know the answer. 925-234-8181. That's 925-234-8181. If you're watching this and it's recorded, it's only for a live audience. So if you're watching the recording, don't call in. 234-8181. Call in with the answer to that trivia question, and you're going to get that book by Keith Geisner. I love when I find modern technology and a classic look in a modern product. And this right here gives me both. It's a fuel filter, and it's made by GIS Products. But this isn't like any other filter I've ever seen. It's constructed of 304 pleated stainless steel. And what I love about it most is you can take it apart and the element is washable and reusable indefinitely. Another great thing about it is for you vintage guys who have steel tanks or may have had tanks that have a delaminated liner, this is the filter you want to use. No matter what you do on those tanks, you never get out everything. This filter is going to protect you along the way. It's also great for fuel-injected bikes and minis. Now, speaking of fuel-injected bikes, this little filter right here is good for up to 200 PSI. Your fuel-injected bike guys, you run at about 40 to 60 PSI. So you got that going for you too. As I said, it's made in the USA, it's patent pending, and it's available for just $64.99. It's the last filter you're ever going to buy. Go online, check them out at golanproducts.com. Thanks, Golan Products. In the product spotlight tonight from Vinco, we're going to be talking about a sleeve for your Mako. That's right. Vinco, they keep the ride going, and they're going to keep your Mako going with a sleeve for your 1981 Mako 490. It measures 86.5 millimeters. All the dimensions are provided with this for an experienced and qualified machinist to install it in your cylinder. The ports are angled correctly, so there is significantly less port machine work to do than you have with any other sleeve. Okay, this sleeve will be able to be bored and honed to your stock piston that you can also buy from Vinco. Its new high-quality cast iron cylinder sleeve can help you keep your bike running a whole lot longer. Vinco, keep the ride going at $159.95. I'd be real interested if I had a Mako 490 in getting one of these products from Vinco. So check them out online. Vinco, keep the ride going. We're going to take a commercial break. When we get back, we should have a trivia winner. Don't forget to keep sharing the show, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, Only Vinco knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vinco, keep the ride going.
Okay. You have to call in to win the book. 925-234-8181. Call in. We are live. Sue is standing by. 925-234-8181 with the correct answer for who has a corner named after them at Motocross 338 at Southwick. Call Susie. Tell her the name. You're going to win a book. Compliments of Keith Geisner. All right, Jordan, let's get on with the next segment. I think it is This Week in MX History, sponsored by Nightmare Racing, and I'll be telling you a little bit more about Nightmare Racing products in just a moment. But this week in MX history was a huge milestone for American motocross as New Yorker Jimmy Weinert becomes the first American to ever win a round of the International Trans Am Series, earning the overall victory at Rio Bravo, Texas, round of the series, which had been running since 1970. Kawasaki-mounted Weinert overcame wildly adverse conditions, ranging from hot and slippery to wet and muddy, to survive both motos and go 2 and 3 for the overall. The moto winners, Germany's Adolf Viel and the transplanted Dutchman Pierre Kosmakers, both DNF'd in that moto and did not win. So another Dutchman Mako rider as well, Garrett Wolsink, was second overall. And Weinert's longtime AMA rival, Gary Jones, also on a Mako, was third. So Jimmy Weinert, first American. You know, when I hear first American, the first thing I think of is Jimmy Pomeroy. He was the first American to do so many things, boy. And whenever I read that, I always think of Jimmy. Also happening this week in MX history in 1973, having lost their star rider, Gary Jones, to the fact that they did not have an open class bike, and Jones wanted to race in the international class at the Trans Am Series, Honda turned to Rich Eierstedt to carry the flag in the 250 national support class during that series. Eierstedt ended up being the perfect replacement, winning 4 races and the series title early. Reigning 2-time AMA 250 motocross champion Jones, who switched to a privateer Mako, had a best finish of third in the series. In 1978, it was Darrell Schultz's day to shine, riding a pre-production 79 Mako. California's Darrell Schultz won the overall at the series concluding Sears Point race in Sonoma, California. The win would mark the last win for Mako ever in a Trans Am series, as both the brand and the tour were losing its relevance as the decade began to close. Darrell Schultz on the Mako back in 1978. And that's what happened this week in MX history. Nightmare Racing, the best reproduction Kawasaki plastic on the planet, sold to you, of course, by Mark Hildebrand in St. Louis. If you need plastic for any Kawasaki's, their KX model, of course, some of their F series, yeah, I think the F series, they had some plastic fenders on them. Anyway, Mark has them from 1973 all the way into the mid 80s. It's nice, it's beautiful, it's shiny, it fits perfectly, and it's always fairly priced. I want you to get a hold of my friend Mark Hildebrand at Nightmare Racing. You could either contact him through Facebook or through email, and he's going to give you a really great deal on everything he has in stock for those amazing Kawasaki's that are out there. When I restore Kawasaki, it's the only plastic I will ever use. Thank you, Mark Hildebrand, for your support here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. And the announcements. Last week, I had Sue Fish as my guest on Vintage Motocross Radio. We had a great conversation. Jordan's got a soundbite here for you. Let's listen to what Sue Fish had to say.
You were part of the Evel Knievel stunt tour. Now, you were racing motocross at that time. How does an Evel Knievel stunt tour kind of interrupt your career there?
Well, I was just breaking into doing stunt work, and I had just finished working on a movie called Ruckus. It's a B movie, and I did a bunch of, John Hazley and I did a bunch of motorcycle jumps and stunts and things for this movie. And I had been offered to go to Australia to go with the Evel Knievel thing by a promoter of some sort. I can't remember really who it was. Okay. But back then I used to think it was really cheesy. The whole jumping thing, and all of that. It wasn't really looked upon in the motorcycle industry as being legit, right? People were like, yeah, that's just kind of whatever. But the fact that it was Evel Knievel and that we were going to be in another country, I thought, well, I might as well go make some money this summer.
Sue Fish with some great stories of her time at the Evel Knievel tour. And if you listen to that, she'll even tell you about the time Evel Knievel punched his kid Robbie in the nose. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Listen to the interview at Vintage Motocross Radio. My guest this Sunday will be former factory Mako and factory Honda rider Gary Chaplin. So tune in at 11 a.m. Sunday morning to hear my interview with my buddy Gary Chaplin. And in 2 weeks, I'll have Tommy Croft on the show too. So this weekend, Gary Chaplin. In 2 weeks, Tommy Croft. We should have done an interview right here while we were all cocktailing one day at a party. That would have made a great interview right there. But anyway, I'm excited about Gary Chaplin being with me on Sunday. 2 weeks, Tommy Croft. Stay tuned. I'll have a guest in between those two guys as well.
You've been hearing me talk about this bike on the show for a couple of weeks now. 1983 Honda CR250, and we are giving it away. If you want to get involved in the raffle, there's nothing to purchase, nothing to buy. Just go onto your email and email us at vmxqalive@gmail.com. You'll have an opportunity to win this bike. We're giving it away on the show December 23rd, 2020.
Oh yeah, the Old School Scrambles Racing Organization's got a race coming up on Sunday, December 20th. So that's Sunday, December 20th. Got a great race going down there. And Glen Helen, of course, Tammy and Ralph always put on a great series. So it's the Old School Scrambles Racing Group at Glen Helen. And there's a link in the description if you want to find out more about the race. T-shirts are still available, just $21.99, 100% cotton. They come in white, small, medium, large, extra large. Got the Vintage Motocross Q&A logo across the front. My autograph across the back, $21.99. Get yourself a T-shirt. You know what? Christmas isn't that far away. Might be a nice Christmas item for somebody you know. Sponsorship opportunities are still available. You too could be seeing the results of all the sponsors we have here on the board behind me. Now, we are running out of real estate a little bit here, but I've got a whole bunch of real estate on the other side of this shop, and I am more than willing to put your name up on that board. So get a hold of me. I will get you a sponsorship package, a proposal package, and we'll see if we can't put something together for your budget for you to become a sponsor here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. And you also get the benefit of being on our radio show, Vintage Motocross Radio, on Sunday. What else can I tell you? We've put together some really great deals with the sponsors that we have. We're working on a few things as far as how often they're on and what fits their budget. I can do the same thing for you. We're reaching close to 30,000 people a week, every week, between the shares and the Facebook page and YouTube and a whole lot more. So get a hold of me. We'll get you a sponsorship proposal package and give us some help here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. And I got to say it again tonight. Between the segments on the show that we do, between going to a race and reporting live and doing interviews, this is just as much a television show as you're ever going to see on one of those networks on television, whether it's Discovery or any of those cable channels, okay? And once we take this up to the next level and we can maybe get some sponsorship opportunities involved for people to start sponsoring bike rebuilds and things like that, or traveling a little bit further to go out and cover some events, maybe things like the Terry Good fundraiser that he's having in Chicago, I think in the spring. Wouldn't you like to see stuff like that? This show can make that happen. These are things that I can do on the show that I can't make happen on shows or on channels like the Discovery Channel, because they're not going to let me make the show that I want to make. But I don't really care anymore. Okay? I'm not really concerned with that. I can make the show I want to make right here on Facebook, on YouTube, on some other outlets, but I need you people to share it. I need you to start riding the butt of some of the administrators of some of these Facebook pages, okay, to get the word out there. We just talked a little while ago about Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page, 15,000 members. How many other groups have 15,000, 20, 30,000 members in there? Now, I'm not saying I'm not happy with the results I'm seeing here, but we got about 5,000 members on this page. Yes, it reaches a lot of people every week, but we have 5,000 members here. We should have a whole lot more than that. And if anybody is really considering themselves to be an enthusiast in vintage motocross, you need to get the word out there about this show. I'm going to have a thing on it next week in the Just How I See It segment. And I'm going to be pulling out all the stops on what I think needs to be done and how you are going to be able to help me do that. What do we got next, Jordan? That's it. I want to thank all the viewers for tuning in to Vintage Motocross Q&A. I want to thank our sponsors. Oh, you know what I forgot? We didn't really get a call. So hang on a second. Everybody stay where you are. Nobody called in, although I made it clear that you needed to call in with the answer of the trivia contest. But Hugh Falwell got the answer correct. The answer is Paul Buckley. Paul Buckley had his own corner at MX338 in Southwick. It was called Buckley's Corner. And Hugh Falwell, as much as I, was standing here with my pants on fire trying to tell you to call in, you didn't call in, but you were the first to type it in. So Buckley's Corner is the answer. Get a hold of us, Hugh Falwell. I'll get your address. We'll get you a copy of Funny Number 49 by Keith Geisner. Thanks, everybody, for listening tonight. Don't forget Vintage Motocross Radio on Sunday. Gary Chaplin is my guest. Gino! Oh, Gino! Come on, boy. Okay. Good night, everyone. You smell